His hands were shaking. Adanna felt at the moment Jihoon touched her, the tremor in his fingers as they traced the curve of her waist, like he was afraid she might disappear if he held on too tight. They were in her bedroom. The curtains were half open, letting in just enough moonlight to see his face. To see the way he was looking at her, like she was the only thing keeping him tethered to this world. Adanna, he whispered, and his voice cracked on her name. She reached up, cupped his face. His skin was warm under her palms. Real. Solid. Alive. For 18 months, she'd felt like a ghost. Walking through life but not really living it. Going through the motions while everything inside her stayed frozen in that moment when the police called to tell her James was dead. But now, lying beneath Jihoon, feeling the weight of him, the heat of him, she felt something she thought she'd lost forever. She felt alive. "Look at me," Jihoon said softly, his thumb brushing across her cheek. She opened her eyes. Met his gaze. And in that moment, something passed between them that had no name. Recognition, maybe. Or understanding. Two broken people finding each other in the dark. When he entered her, slowly, so slowly, like he was giving her time to change her mind, Adanna gasped. Not from pain. From the overwhelming sensation of being present in her body again. A tear slid down her temple. Then another. Jihoon froze immediately. "Did I hurt you? Do you want me to?" "No." Her voice came out broken, desperate. She wrapped her legs around him, pulled him closer. "Don't stop. Please, Jihoon, don't stop." His breath hitched. For a moment, he just looked at her, his eyes searching hers like he was trying to memorize every detail of this moment. "I've got you," he murmured, wiping her tears with his thumb while his other hand gripped her hip. "I've got you, Adanna." He started to move. Slow. Deliberate. Each thrust measured, controlled, like he was afraid of breaking her. But Adanna didn't want careful. She wanted to feel. After 18 months of numbness, she wanted to feel everything. She arched into him, her nails digging into his shoulders. More, she breathed against his neck. Jihoon made a sound low in his throat, something between a groan and a prayer. His control slipped. His movements became more urgent, more desperate, and Adanna matched him thrust for thrust. Their foreheads pressed together. Their breath mingled. Their bodies moved in a rhythm that felt ancient, inevitable, like this was always meant to happen. "You're so beautiful," Jihoon whispered, his voice wrecked. "So beautiful and I don't deserve." "Don't," Adanna cut him off, pulling him down for a kiss. "Don't say that. Just be here with me." So he was. He kissed her tears. Her neck. Her collarbone. Like he was trying to learn the map of her body with his lips. His hands slid between them, finding the place that made her gasp and arch and forget her own name. The pleasure built slowly, then all at once. Adanna felt it coiling in her belly, spreading through her limbs like fire. "Jihoon," she moaned, her voice breaking. I'm going to." "Let go," he urged, his movements becoming harder, faster. "I've got you. Let go." She did. The orgasm crashed over her like a wave, so intense she couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel. Her whole body tensed, then shattered, and through it all Jihoon held her, whispered her name like a benediction, like she was something sacred. Moments later, he followed her over the edge with a strangled sound against her shoulder, his body shuddering in her arms. They lay tangled together afterward, hearts racing, skin damp with sweat. Adanna's head rested on Jihoon's chest, and she listened to his heartbeat slowly return to normal. His fingers traced absent patterns on her back. Gentle. Reverent. "What are we doing?" she whispered into the silence. Jihoon's arm tightened around her. "I don't know. But I don't want to stop." "Me neither." She felt his lips press against her hair. Felt safe for the first time in 18 months. Felt like maybe, just maybe, she could survive this grief that had been slowly killing her. She had no idea that in 3 weeks, she'd discover this same man, this man whose arms felt like home, whose touch made her feel alive again, had ordered her husband's death. Welcome to Korean Stories with Charis, where love is complicated, hearts break in ways you didn't know they could, and the truth always costs more than you're ready to pay. You're here because you felt that opening, aren't you? Because something about broken people finding each other in the dark speaks to something inside you. I see you. And this story? This story is going to wreck you in the best and worst ways possible. So if you're already hooked, and I know you are because you're still here, show some love. Hit that like button. Drop a comment and tell me where you are watching from. Thank you. Now let's go back to where it all started. 3 weeks earlier. It was 3:47 in the morning when Adanna gave up on sleep. The apartment felt too quiet, too empty, like it was holding its breath waiting for James to come home. But James wasn't coming home. James had been dead for 18 months. His coffee mug still sat in the cabinet, unwashed from the last morning he'd used it. His favorite jacket still hung by the door. His pillow still held the faintest trace of his cologne, fading a little more each day no matter how desperately she tried to preserve it. Adanna pulled on her coat and stepped into the cold Busan night. She'd been doing this for months now, wandering empty streets at ungodly hours like maybe if she walked far enough, she could outrun the grief that followed her everywhere. She couldn't. But she kept walking anyway. The alley near Gwangali Beach was dark and narrow. She almost turned back. Almost chose the main road instead. That almost would have changed everything. 3 men were on the ground, blood pooling black under the dim streetlights. And standing over them was a man in an expensive suit, his knuckles split and bleeding, his face completely empty of emotion. Until he looked up and saw her. Their eyes met. Adanna's breath caught in her throat. She should have been terrified. Should have run immediately. But for one impossible second, all she felt was something. Something that cut through the fog of grief she'd been living in. Something sharp and real and alive. Jihoon stared at her with an intensity that made time stop. Made her forget where she was. Made her forget everything except the feeling of being seen, really seen, for the first time in 18 months. Then reality crashed back in. She ran. Her footsteps echoed off the alley walls as she sprinted back to the main street, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. She didn't stop until she reached her apartment building, lungs burning, hands shaking as she fumbled with her keys. Inside, she locked every door. Every window. Sat on her bed with her knees pulled to her chest and tried to catch her breath. And realized she was crying. Not from fear. From something else entirely. Because for the first time since James died, she'd felt something other than the hollow ache of grief. Even if that something was terror. Even if it was dangerous. At least it was something. She didn't sleep that night. Just sat there replaying that moment. Those dark eyes. The blood. The impossible connection that shouldn't have existed. Morning came slowly. When Adanna finally worked up the courage to open her front door to get the newspaper, she nearly stepped on it. A single white orchid in a simple glass vase. No note. No explanation. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. She should call the police. Should tell someone what she'd seen. Should do anything except bring the orchid inside. But she did. She set it on her kitchen counter where the morning light made it glow, and she stared at it for a long time, trying to understand what she was feeling. The cafe was her ritual. Had been for months. Same Americano, same table by the window, same crushing emptiness. It was routine, and routine was all that kept her functioning. But that morning, he was there. Jihoon sat 3 tables away, reading a newspaper like he hadn't been covered in blood just hours ago. He was clean now. Polished. Wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than she made in a month. He looked up as she entered, and their eyes met again. Adanna's heart stuttered. She ordered her coffee on autopilot, her voice somehow staying steady even though her hands were shaking. When she turned around, Jihoon was standing right behind her. Up close, he was different than she'd expected. There were dark circles under his eyes, like he hadn't slept either. A small cut on his jaw that he'd tried to cover. And when he spoke, his voice was soft. Almost gentle. "I didn't mean to frighten you," he said in Korean. Adanna blinked. She hadn't expected Korean. "You were covered in blood. They were trying to hurt someone. I stopped them." "That wasn't stopping. That was necessary," Jihoon finished. His voice had steel underneath the softness. The barista called Adanna's name. She grabbed her coffee, her fingers wrapping around the cup like it might anchor her to reality. "May I sit with you?" Jihoon asked, switching to English. His accent was American. "California, maybe." Every instinct Adanna had screamed no. This man was dangerous. This man had hurt people. This man was exactly the kind of person she should stay far away from. "Okay," she heard herself say. They sat by the window. Morning light poured over their table, making the moment feel surreal. Like maybe she was still asleep. Maybe this was just another strange dream in a long line of strange dreams she'd been having since James died. "You're not Korean," Jihoon observed. "Nigerian. British Nigerian. I grew up in London." Adanna paused. "Your English is very good. I studied in California for 3 years. UC Berkeley." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "I thought I wanted to be a writer. Read poetry. Live a simple life." "What changed?" The smile disappeared. "Life." They sat in silence for a moment. Adanna found herself studying him. The way he held his coffee cup carefully, like he was used to controlling every movement. The thin scar that ran from his thumb to his wrist. The way his eyes kept flicking to the cafe entrance, always aware, always watching. "What brought you to Busan?" Jihoon asked. Adanna looked down at her coffee. This was always the hard part. "My husband. He worked here. We moved from Seoul about 2 years ago." "He's not with you anymore?" The question was gentle, but it still felt like a knife sliding between her ribs. "He died 18 months ago." Jihoon's expression softened. Something that looked almost like pain flickered across his face. "I'm sorry. Everyone is." The bitterness leaked through despite her best efforts. "But sorry doesn't bring him back. Sorry doesn't make the empty apartment any less empty. Sorry doesn't make it easier to breathe." She stopped herself. She was saying too much. Revealing too much to a stranger who'd been standing over bleeding bodies just hours ago. But Jihoon didn't look uncomfortable with her honesty. If anything, he looked understanding. "No," he agreed quietly. "It doesn't." They sat in silence again. But this time, it wasn't awkward. It was almost comfortable. Like they were two people who understood something about pain that most people didn't. "The orchid was beautiful," Adanna finally said. "Thank you." White orchids mean "I'm thinking of you" in Korean flower language. "Is that why you left it?" "Yes." "Why were you thinking of me?" Jihoon was quiet for a long moment. His fingers traced the rim of his coffee cup, and Adanna noticed his hands, strong, scarred, but surprisingly elegant. "Because when you looked at me in that alley," he said finally, "you weren't afraid at first. You were curious. And I haven't seen someone look at me like that, like I'm human instead of something else, in a very long time." Adanna didn't know what to say to that. The honesty in his voice was startling. Vulnerable. From a man who looked like he'd built walls so high nothing could get through. So she didn't say anything. Just drank her coffee and let the silence settle between them like something alive. That was the first morning. There would be 13 more before everything changed. The next day, Jihoon was there again. Same table. Same newspaper. Different suit, this one was navy blue, perfectly tailored. This time, Adanna sat down without being asked. You're making this a habit, she observed. Is that a problem? I don't know yet. Jihoon smiled. It transformed his entire face, made him look younger, softer, less like the man she'd seen in the alley. Honest. I appreciate that. They talked for over an hour that morning. Surface things at first. Favorite foods, she loved jollof rice and suya. He had a weakness for tteokbokki and anything spicy enough to hurt. Books they'd read, she'd studied art history in university. He'd majored in literature before switching to business. Why business? Adanna asked. Jihoon's expression shuddered slightly. Family obligation. My father, he had expectations. And I learned that sometimes you have to become someone you're not in order to survive. Do you regret it? Every day. He said it so simply, so matter-of-factly, that Adanna believed him. But regret doesn't change anything. You make choices. You live with them. Adanna thought about James. About the choice to move to Korea. About the life they'd built together. About how all those choices had led to him lying in a morgue while she identified his body. What about you? Jihoon asked. You said you studied art history. Are you an artist? I wanted to be a painter. The admission felt strange on her tongue. She hadn't talked about this in so long. But then, life happened. I taught English instead. It was practical. Safe. And now? Now I don't do much of anything. I work part-time at a small gallery. Enough to pay rent. That's it. Why did you stop painting? Adanna looked out the window at Busan waking up, the morning commuters, the vendors setting up their stalls, the whole city moving forward while she stayed frozen. James died, and colors stopped making sense, she said quietly. Everything just looked gray. Still does, mostly. Even now? Adanna looked back at Jihoon. At the way morning light caught in his dark hair. At the intensity in his eyes that made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt in so long. At the way he listened like every word she said mattered. Maybe gray is starting to crack, she admitted. Something shifted in Jihoon's expression. Something that looked almost like hope. Like maybe he understood what it meant to live in gray and desperately want color again. By day 5, Jihoon knew her coffee order by heart, Americano, extra shot, no sugar. He'd arrive before her and have it waiting. Such a small gesture, but it made Adanna feel cared for in a way she'd forgotten was possible. By day 7, they'd moved beyond the cafe to walking along Gwangali Beach at sunset. The ocean stretched out before them, endless and dark, and Adanna found herself talking about James for the first time in months. People keep saying I need to move on, she said as they watched the waves. My sister calls from London every week and asks if I'm dating yet. My friend Chioma thinks I should go to grief counseling. Everyone has advice about what I should do with my pain. But they don't have to carry it, Jihoon said quietly. No. They don't. Adanna stopped walking, looked out at the water. They think there's a timeline. Like one day I'll just wake up and James will be a memory that doesn't hurt anymore. Like grief has an expiration date. Does it? Jihoon asked. I don't know. Do you want it to? Adanna thought about that. Really thought about it. I don't know. Forgetting him feels like betrayal. Like I'm erasing him. Erasing us. But this pain. She pressed her hand to her chest. It's eating me alive. Some days I can barely breathe. Some days I walk these streets at 3 in the morning because the apartment feels like it's suffocating me. Jihoon stopped walking too. He turned to face her, and in the dying light, his expression was intense. Raw. You don't forget, he said. You just learn to carry it differently. The weight doesn't disappear. You don't wake up one day and feel nothing. You just You just get stronger at holding it. The grief becomes part of you instead of all of you. You sound like you know. I do. Jihoon's hand went to his scar, fingers tracing the thin line from thumb to wrist. Someone I trusted cut me. Literally and figuratively. Taught me that some wounds never fully close. The physical scar healed. The betrayal didn't. Adanna wanted to ask more: who had hurt him, what had happened, why he looked like he carried the weight of 1,000 regrets. But something in his expression stopped her. Some doors weren't ready to be opened yet. They walked in silence after that, the sound of waves filling the space between words. When Jihoon walked her home that night, he stopped at her door like always. But this time, there was something different in the air. Something charged. "Thank you," Adanna said. "For listening. For not telling me what I should feel or how long I should grieve. You don't have to thank me for that." Still. She hesitated, then added, "I don't know what we're doing here, Jihoon. But I'm glad you left that orchid. I'm glad you keep showing up at the cafe." Jihoon's expression softened. "So am I." He left without touching her, but Adanna felt the ghost of what didn't happen: a touch, a kiss, a crossing of a line they'd both been circling. That night, she went home and looked at James's photo for the first time in weeks without immediately breaking down. She picked it up, traced his face with her finger like she'd done 1,000 times before. "I met someone," she whispered to the photo. "I don't know what it means. I don't know if you'd understand. But I think I'm starting to feel alive again, and I don't know if that's okay. Is it okay, James? Please tell me it's okay to stop hurting so much." The photo didn't answer. It never did. But Adanna felt something shift inside her anyway. Permission, maybe. Or just exhaustion with carrying grief like a boulder on her back. Either way, something was changing. Day 10. Rain hammered against the cafe windows, turning the world outside into a blur of gray. Adanna and Jihoon sat closer than usual, their shoulders almost touching. "Tell me about him," Jihoon said suddenly. "Your husband." Adanna was surprised. Most people avoided talking about James like he was a taboo subject. Like mentioning the dead would somehow make her fall apart. "Why do you want to know?" "Because he was important to you. Because you loved him. Because understanding who he was helps me understand who you are." The honesty in Jihoon's voice made Adanna's chest ache. "He was kind," she said slowly, carefully picking through memories like selecting photographs. "Patient. When I first moved to Korea, I didn't speak any Korean. I was terrified. But James, he taught me. Spent hours with me, never got frustrated when I couldn't roll my Rs properly or kept mixing up formal and informal speech." She smiled at the memory. It didn't hurt quite as much as it used to. He loved spicy food even though it made him sweat. He'd order the spiciest tteokbokki and his face would turn red and he'd be gasping for water, but he'd keep eating it because he was stubborn. He laughed at his own jokes before he even finished telling them. He had this ridiculous loud laugh that embarrassed me in public but also made me love him more. "He sounds like he was good to you." He was. We had a good life. Simple. Safe. We talked about having kids someday. About moving back to London eventually. About growing old together. Her voice caught. Until we didn't get to do any of that. "How did he die?" Jihoon asked carefully, like he was walking through a minefield. Adanna took a breath. She'd told this story so many times it should feel routine by now. But it still felt like swallowing glass. They said it was a mugging. Wrong place, wrong time. He was walking home from work through an alley near our old apartment in Seoul. The words came out flat, mechanical. It was late. Around midnight. Someone attacked him. Stabbed him. Took his wallet and his watch and left him there to bleed out. Her hand tightened around her coffee cup. A couple found him an hour later. Called an ambulance. But it was too late. He'd already he was already gone. She forced herself to keep talking. The police said it was probably random. Gang violence. That Seoul has problems with organized crime and sometimes innocent people get caught in the crossfire. Something flickered across Jihoon's face, too quick for Adanna to read, but she saw it. A twitch around his eyes. A tightening of his jaw. They never caught who did it, she continued. The case is still technically open, but the detective told me not to get my hopes up. These things rarely get solved. Random street crime is almost impossible to trace. I'm sorry, Jihoon said, and his voice sounded strained. I'm so sorry that happened to you. To him. Me too. They sat in silence, rain drumming against glass, the cafe warm and quiet around them. Adanna realized she was leaning into Jihoon's warmth without meaning to, and he was letting her. Day 12. Evening. Jihoon walked her home like he'd been doing for over a week now. At her door, the air felt different. Charged. Like something was building between them that neither could name. Can I tell you something? Jihoon asked. Yes. I haven't felt this calm in years. Not since before I became who I am now. Who are you now? Adanna asked, searching his face. Someone who shouldn't be standing at your door. Someone who's done things. He trailed off, jaw tight. Someone who doesn't deserve what you make me feel. And what do I make you feel? Human. Like maybe I'm more than the sum of my mistakes. The vulnerability in his voice made Adanna's heart clench. Do you want to come in? The words came out before she could stop them. Jihoon's expression shifted, surprise, desire, fear all mixed together. I shouldn't. Why? Because I'm not the man you think I am, Adanna. I'm not good. I'm not safe. I'm dangerous. I know. Adanna stepped closer. I saw you in that alley. I know there's violence in you. I'm not naive about who you are. Then why? Because safe feels like dying slowly. The admission tore out of her. I've been safe for 18 months. Safe and alone and so numb I forgot what it felt like to want anything. And then you showed up and I felt something again. Terror at first. But then curiosity. Then, this. She gestured between them, at the invisible thread pulling them together. I don't know what this is, she continued. But I know that when I'm with you, the gray cracks a little more. And I'm so tired of living in gray, Jihoon. I'm so tired of just existing. Jihoon stepped closer, close enough that Adanna could feel the heat radiating off him. Close enough to see the conflict warring in his eyes. Adanna, he said, and the way her name sounded in his voice, broken, reverent, desperate, made her decision for her. Come inside, she whispered. He did. The tea she made went cold on the kitchen counter. They never drank it. They sat on her couch, closer than they'd ever been, and the air between them crackled with possibility. With inevitability. I need you to understand something, Jihoon said. His voice was rough, strained, like the words were being dragged out of him. I've done terrible things. Things I can't undo. Things I can't take back. If you knew. Then tell me, Adanna interrupted. I can't. Why? Because you'll look at me differently. Because you'll be afraid of me. Because I'll lose this. His hand gestured between them. And I'm selfish enough that I don't want to lose it yet. Adanna studied his face, the tension in his jaw, the shadows in his eyes, the way he looked like he was bracing for her to push him away. She touched his scarred hand instead. Traced the line from thumb to wrist with gentle fingers. Tell me something true, she said softly. I'm dangerous to everyone I care about. Tell me something else. I haven't cared about anyone in 10 years. Until you. The confession hung in the air between them. I'm scared, Adanna admitted. Of me? Of this. Of feeling something again. Of wanting something. Of losing it. She looked up at him. Of losing you. Jihoon cupped her face with both hands, his touch impossibly gentle for someone capable of such violence. You won't lose me, he said. You can't promise that. No, he agreed. But I can promise I'll try. That's all I have. The kiss happened like gravity. Like inevitability. Jihoon's lips met hers softly at first, questioning, giving her room to pull away. But Adanna didn't pull away. She leaned in, kissed him back with 18 months of grief and loneliness and desperate need for connection. The kiss deepened. Became urgent. Became necessary. They moved to her bedroom without discussing it, shedding clothes between kisses, leaving a trail behind them. And that's when his hand started trembling against her skin. When she whispered, "Don't stop, please." When she felt alive for the first time since James died. The next 2 weeks blurred into something that felt dangerously close to happiness. Jihoon came over every evening. They talked for hours about everything and nothing, books they loved, places they wanted to visit, dreams they'd given up on. They made love slowly, urgently, tenderly, desperately, like each time might be the last. Adanna started painting again. Small pieces at first, abstract splashes of color that didn't mean anything except that gray was definitely cracking now. Jihoon would sit and watch her paint, and the way he looked at her made her feel seen in a way that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. "You're talented," he said one evening, watching her work on a canvas of blues and silvers. "I'm rusty. You're finding your way back." He came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. "That's brave." "It doesn't feel brave. It feels like I'm betraying James." "Why?" "Because he's dead and I'm happy. Because I'm falling for you and he's been gone less than 2 years. Because..." She set down her brush. "Because I don't know if I'm allowed to move on." Jihoon turned her to face him. "Do you think James would want you to stop living?" "No. But it still feels wrong. Grief isn't logical, Adanna. There's no timeline. No rules. You're allowed to be happy. You're allowed to want things. You're allowed to live." She kissed him for that. For understanding. For not making her feel guilty. But her friend Chioma noticed the change immediately. "You look different," Chioma said when they met for lunch at a small Nigerian restaurant tucked away in a side street of Busan. Chioma had moved to Korea 5 years ago for work, was one of the few people who understood what it was like to be black in Korea. The constant stares on the subway, the way people touched their hair without asking, the whispered comments in Korean that you could or couldn't understand, the polite distance that never quite closed no matter how long you lived here. "Different how?" Adanna asked, though she knew. "Alive. You actually look alive again." Chioma leaned forward, her braids swinging. "There's someone, isn't there?" Adanna couldn't help the small smile. "Maybe. Girl. Tell me everything." So Adanna did. Not everything. She left out the alley, the blood, the violence she could feel humming under Jihoon's skin like a live wire. She left out the careful way he moved, always calculating exits. She left out the phone calls he took in another room, speaking rapid Korean in a tone she'd never heard him use with her. But she told Chioma about the cafe. About the walks on the beach. About the way he made her feel seen. About starting to paint again. Chioma listened, and her expression grew more concerned with each word. "Ada," she said finally, setting down her fork. "What do you actually know about this man?" "Enough." "His last name? Where he works? Where he's from? Anything concrete?" Adanna realized with a start that she didn't. They'd been living in this bubble, neither of them volunteering real information about their lives outside of each other. "His name is Jihoon. He works in business. Import-export, I think he said." Chioma pulled out her phone. "What's his full name?" "I don't know." "Adanna." Chioma's voice was gentle but firm. "I need to tell you something." And I need you to really listen to me. The restaurant suddenly felt too loud. Too bright. Too real. There's a man named Jihoon who's been mentioned in some circles I'm aware of. Korean organized crime circles. Chioma reached across the table, took Adanna's hand. Money laundering. Protection rackets. Maybe worse. My cousin works for the prosecutor's office in Seoul. She's mentioned the name a few times in connection with cases they're investigating. Adanna's stomach dropped. It's probably not the same person. Jihoon is a common name in Korea. Maybe. But I need you to be careful, Ada. Show me a picture of him. I don't have one. We've never. Adanna realized they'd never taken a single photo together. Never posted anything. Never left any evidence they existed to each other outside of private moments. Then describe him. Adanna did. The expensive suits that fit too perfectly. The scar from thumb to wrist. The age, late 30s. The way he carried himself like violence was always an option, always just beneath the surface. The American accent. Chioma's face fell with each detail. Ada. I think it might be him. You don't know that for sure. No. But men like that, men involved in that world, they don't fall for foreign women by accident. There's always a reason. Always an angle. Chioma squeezed her hand tighter. Whatever he wants from you. He doesn't want anything. But even as Adanna said it, doubt crept in. He's not using me. How do you know? Because I feel it. Because when he touches me, when he looks at me, I can see. Ada. You've known him for 3 weeks. 3 weeks and you're already defending him without knowing anything real about him. Chioma's voice was gentle but relentless. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to protect you. Because if this is the man my cousin has mentioned, you're playing with fire. Maybe I want to play with fire. The words came out sharper than Adanna intended. Maybe I'm tired of being safe and alone. Maybe I'd rather take a risk than keep dying inside. Even if that risk destroys you? Adanna didn't have an answer for that. They finished lunch in tense silence. Chioma paid the bill, she always did, said it was her way of taking care of her friend who was barely surviving. They hugged goodbye on the street, and Chioma whispered in her ear, "Be careful, Ada. Please." Walking home, Adanna felt fear creeping in for the first time since the alley. Because Chioma was right. What did she really know about Jihoon? That he was kind to her. That he listened. That he made her feel alive. But beyond that? Nothing concrete. Nothing real. That night, when Jihoon came over, Adanna watched him differently. She noticed things she'd been deliberately ignoring. The way he checked every window before sitting down. The way his phone buzzed constantly and he always stepped into another room to answer, his voice dropping to a tone she'd never heard him use with her, cold, authoritative, dangerous. The way he moved through her apartment calculating exits, always aware of his surroundings, always ready. Is something wrong? Jihoon asked, catching her staring. Tell me about your work. Why? Because I realized I don't actually know anything about you. Not really. Jihoon set down his tea. What do you want? To know? The truth. What do you really do? I told you. Import-export. Business management. That's not the whole truth though, is it? Jihoon was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. Why are you asking that? Because someone told me you might be involved in things. Illegal things. Dangerous things. Someone told you. His voice went flat, carefully neutral, and Adanna saw the shift, the man from the cafe disappearing, someone else emerging. Who? Does it matter? Yes. A friend. She's worried about me. She said your name came up in some prosecutor's investigation. Organized crime. Jihoon stood up. walked to the window. His shoulders were tense, and Adanna could see him calculating something behind his eyes. When he turned back, his face was unreadable. The vulnerability he usually showed her was gone, replaced by something harder. Colder. "I'm not who you think I am," he said finally. "Then tell me who you are." "Someone who's done terrible things to survive. To build something. To protect what's mine." He took a step toward her. "Someone who shouldn't have fallen in love with you, but did anyway." Adanna's heart stopped. "Love? Yes. You can't love someone you've known for 3 weeks. Can't I?" Jihoon's expression cracked slightly, vulnerability bleeding through. "You think I chose this? You think I wanted to feel this way about you? I saw you in that alley and something in me recognized something in you, and I tried to stay away. I tried to leave you alone. But I couldn't. Because you love me." "Yes." The word hung in the air between them, too big, too soon, too dangerous. Adanna wanted to say it back. The words were right there, pressing against her lips, demanding to be said. Because God help her, she did love him. This man she barely knew. This dangerous, complicated, probably criminal man who made her feel alive again. But fear held the words hostage. "I need time," she said instead. "To think. To process what you're telling me." Jihoon nodded. The disappointment in his eyes was almost physical. "I understand. Do you?" Adanna stood up too. "Because I don't. I don't understand how I can feel this way about someone I know so little about. I don't understand how you can say you love me when you won't tell me the truth about who you are. I don't understand any of this. Then what do you want from me?" "Honesty. Real honesty. Not vague answers and deflection. And if the honest answer is that I'm exactly what your friend said? If I tell you I'm involved in things that would horrify you? What then, Adanna? Will you still want me?" The question hung between them, unanswerable. "I don't know," Adanna whispered. Jihoon's expression shuddered completely. "Then I should go." "Jihoon. No. You need time. I get that. I'll give you space." He walked to the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. "But I meant what I said. I love you. And whatever you decide, that won't change." He left. The door closed. Adanna stood in her living room, alone again, and realized she was shaking. 3 days passed. Jihoon texted every day, simple messages that made her chest ache. "Thinking of you. Hope you're okay. I'm here when you're ready." Adanna didn't respond. She needed space. Needed to think clearly without his presence overwhelming her senses, making her forget all her logical concerns. But clarity didn't come. Just more confusion. More guilt. More fear. On the 4th day, she found herself standing in front of James's laptop. She'd packed it away in her closet after he died, couldn't bear to see his files, his emails, the digital ghost of him. But now, sitting on her bedroom floor with the laptop on her knees, Adanna felt something shift. A need to remember. To understand. To see James as he really was, not just the idealized version grief had created. She opened it. The password was her name, Adanna 1991. It always had been. His desktop loaded. Normal folders. Work documents. Photos of them smiling, younger, happier, before everything went wrong. She clicked through photos for a while, letting herself remember. Their wedding day in Lagos. Their honeymoon in Jeju Island. Moving into their first Seoul apartment. James's promotion. Their anniversary dinner at that expensive restaurant they couldn't really afford. A good life. A simple life. A safe life. And then something made her keep looking. An instinct. A feeling she couldn't name. She found the hidden folder buried deep in his documents, disguised as old tax files from 2019. It was encrypted, password protected. She tried their anniversary date, October 15th. Wrong. She tried her birthday. Wrong. She tried his mother's name. Wrong. On a whim, she tried the date they moved to Korea, May 3rd. It opened. Inside were more folders. Financial records. Spreadsheets with numbers that made no sense, millions of one flowing in and out of accounts she didn't recognize. Names she'd never heard James mention. Bank accounts in the Cayman Islands. In Singapore. In Hong Kong. Adanna's hand started shaking. She opened an email folder. Started reading. And with each email, each document, her world cracked a little more. James hadn't been just an investment analyst. He'd been laundering money. For a Korean Chinese criminal syndicate called the Jade Serpents. Millions of dollars flowing through legitimate businesses, washed clean, redistributed. No, Adanna whispered. No, no, no. But there was more. She kept reading, tears starting to fall. Communications about James wanting out. About him getting scared. About threatening to go to the authorities. About him being called unreliable. A liability. A problem that needed to be solved. And then she saw it. The email that destroyed everything. From, redacted. To, J. Chen. Subject, issue resolution, urgent. The analyst, J. Hartford, is becoming unstable. Threatening to expose operations to federal authorities. This cannot be allowed. Jihoon will handle the liability personally. Timeline, 48 hours. Method, make it appear random. Standard street crime parameters. Confirm when complete. Date, March 13th, 11:47 p.m. 2 days before James died. 2 days before Adanna got the call from Seoul police asking her to come identify a body. 2 days before her entire world ended. She stared at the screen. At Jihoon's name. At the casual, businesslike way they discussed murdering her husband like he was just another problem to eliminate. The white orchid on her kitchen counter caught her eye through the open bedroom door. Symbol of thoughtfulness. Of caring. Of, I'm thinking of you. From the man who'd ordered James's execution. From the man she'd fallen in love with. Adanna's hand started shaking so badly she almost dropped the laptop. Her breath came in short, sharp gasps. The room spun. She stumbled to the bathroom and vomited. Gripped the sink with white knuckles. Looked up at her reflection and didn't recognize the woman staring back. That's when she saw it. The pregnancy test she'd taken that morning on impulse, still sitting on the counter where she'd left it in shock. 2 pink lines. Clear. Unmistakable. Undeniable. She'd taken it because her period was 2 weeks late. Because she'd been feeling nauseous every morning. Because some part of her had suspected but hadn't wanted to face it. But there was no denying it now. She was pregnant. With Jihoon's baby. The man who killed James's baby. A sound escaped her throat that wasn't quite human. Something primal. Something breaking from the deepest part of her. She slid down the bathroom wall, hugging her knees, staring at the pregnancy test in one trembling hand while thinking about the laptop in the bedroom, still open to the email that proved Jihoon had ordered her husband's murder. James had been a criminal. A money launderer for a violent syndicate. Her kind, patient, safe husband had been living a double life. And Jihoon, beautiful, dangerous, complicated Jihoon who made her feel alive again, had killed him. And now she was carrying Jihoon's child. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't destroying her from the inside out. Adanna started laughing. Or crying. She honestly couldn't tell which anymore. Maybe both. The sounds coming from her mouth didn't sound like her own. Her phone was in the bedroom. She crawled to it on hands and knees, still not trusting her legs. Picked it up with shaking hands. Jihoon's name in her contacts. She stared at it for a long moment. Her fingers moved almost on their own, muscle memory taking over where rational thought had completely abandoned her. She opened their message thread. Typed with trembling fingers. I know what you did. Sent. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Disappeared. Appeared again. She could picture him staring at his phone, trying to figure out what she meant. What she'd discovered. Then, I'm on my way. Adanna looked at the pregnancy test still clutched in her other hand. At the laptop still open in the bedroom, still showing the email with Jihoon's name attached to her husband's death sentence. At her hands that had touched Jihoon, held Jihoon, welcomed Jihoon into her body. Into her life. Into her heart. She pressed her palm against her stomach where a tiny cluster of cells was dividing, multiplying, growing into a person who would be half her and half the man who'd destroyed her world. 23 minutes passed like hours. Each second felt like drowning. The doorbell rang. Adanna stood on legs that barely held her weight and walked to the door like she was walking to her own execution. She opened it. Jihoon stood in her doorway looking wrecked. His hair was disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. His jacket was thrown on hastily, one button wrong. His eyes were wild with something that looked like genuine fear, the first time she'd seen him truly scared. Adanna. She held up the pregnancy test. The world stopped. Jihoon's eyes went to the test. Widened. His entire face transformed in an instant, shock melting into wonder, melting into hope, melting into absolute terror. He couldn't finish the sentence. Yes. His hand reached out instinctively, like he wanted to touch her stomach, then stopped midair. Uncertain. Afraid. When did you? This morning. Her voice sounded hollow. Dead. Like it was coming from someone else entirely. Right before I found these. She handed him printouts from James's laptop. The emails. The financial records. The order with his name at the bottom. Jihoon took them with hands that were suddenly shaking. Read. His face went completely blank as he processed what he was seeing, the careful mask he usually wore shattering completely. When he looked up, his eyes were devastated. Adanna, let me. You killed him. The words came out flat. Factual. Like she was reading from a script someone else had written. You killed my husband. You ordered his death. And then you came into my life. You made me fall in love with you. And now I'm pregnant with your baby. The silence was suffocating. Heavy. Like the air before a storm that would destroy everything in its path. Yes, Jihoon finally said. Just that one word. Yes. No explanation. No excuse. No deflection. Just the brutal, honest truth she'd asked for but didn't want. Adanna felt something inside her shatter completely. The sound that came out of her wasn't crying. It was something deeper. Something that came from the part of her that had been holding on by a thread for 18 months and had finally, completely snapped. Get out. Adanna, please let me explain. Get out. She was screaming now, tears streaming down her face, her whole body shaking like she might fly apart. You killed James and then you came to me and you made me love you and there's a baby now and I don't know how to survive this. The words dissolved into sobbing. She couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Couldn't do anything except feel the crushing weight of betrayal and love and grief and new life all colliding inside her at once. Her knees buckled. Jihoon caught her before she hit the floor. Pulled her against his chest and held her while she broke apart completely. Don't touch me, she sobbed, but her hands were gripping his shirt, holding on like he was the only solid thing in a world that was spinning out of control. I'm sorry, he whispered into her hair, and his voice was breaking too. God, Adanna, I'm so sorry. I'm so fucking sorry. You killed him. You killed my husband. I know. I loved him. He was my whole world. I know. And I love you. The admission tore out of her like something vital being ripped away, leaving her bleeding and raw. I hate you and I love you and there's a baby growing inside me and I don't know how to breathe through this. I don't know how to survive this. Jihoon pulled back just enough to cup her face in his hands. His own tears were falling now, silent, devastating, real. I didn't know you existed when I gave that order, he said, voice raw and broken and desperate. James was going to expose everything. He was going to send dozens of people to prison. Destroy families. Tear apart operations that keep people alive. I made a call. I've made hundreds of calls like it over the years. It was business. Cold. Necessary. Brutal. But business. That doesn't make it okay. No. It doesn't. His voice cracked. But then I saw you in that alley. I saw you and you looked at me like I was human instead of a monster. Like I was worth something. And I couldn't stay away. I tried. God, I tried so hard. But I couldn't. Why? Adanna demanded through her tears. Why couldn't you stay away? Because you made me remember what it felt like to be alive. To want something other than power or control or safety. You made me feel human again. His thumbs wiped at her tears even as his own kept falling. And I fell in love with you. Completely. Irrevocably. In a way that terrifies me because I know I don't deserve it. I know I don't deserve you. What do we do now? Adanna whispered, her hand unconsciously moving to her still flat stomach. I don't know. Jihoon's hand covered hers over her belly, and fresh tears spilled from both of them at the reality of what was growing there. But this baby, our baby. I'll protect both of you with everything I have. Even if you can never forgive me. Even if you never want to see me again after today. Even if you hate me for the rest of your life. I don't know what I want. Adanna was crying so hard she could barely speak. I just found out I'm pregnant and that you killed my husband in the same hour, Jihoon. I don't know how to process this. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know anything. They stood there in her doorway, broken and tangled together, a baby growing between them that was both a miracle and a tragedy, both hope and devastation. I need you to leave, Adanna finally said, pulling away from him. It took every ounce of strength she had. I need time. I need space. I need to figure out if I can survive this. Jihoon nodded slowly. He looked like she'd stabbed him, but he stepped back. Take all the time you need, he said quietly. But know this, I love you, Adanna Hartford. I love you in a way I didn't think I was capable of anymore. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of you and that child, even if you can never forgive what I've done. He turned to leave, then paused at the threshold. James wasn't innocent, he said without looking back. I know that doesn't change what I did to you. Doesn't change the pain I've caused. But he knew what he was involved in. He made choices that had consequences. So did you, Adanna said. Yes. I did. Jihoon looked back at her one last time, his eyes full of regret and love and devastation. But meeting you, falling in love with you, that's the one choice I'll never regret. Even if it destroys me. He left. The door closed with a soft click that sounded like the end of the world. Adanna stood alone in her apartment, one hand pressed against her stomach where Jihoon's baby, their baby, was growing. She looked at the pregnancy test still in her other hand. At James's photo on the mantel, forever frozen at 32 years old, smiling at her from a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. At the white orchid on her kitchen counter that had started all of this. And she realized with devastating clarity that she had absolutely no idea who she was anymore. The grieving widow. The woman who'd fallen in love with her husband's killer. The mother-to-be of a child conceived in the ashes of betrayal and death and impossible circumstances. All of her. None of her. Someone completely new. Adanna slid down to the floor right there in the middle of her living room and let herself break completely. Let herself feel the full crushing weight of what she'd discovered. James had been a criminal. A money launderer for violent people. Her kind, safe husband had been living a double life, putting them both in danger. And Jihoon had killed him to protect his organization. Cold. Calculated. Necessary in the brutal world he lived in. And now she was pregnant with Jihoon's baby. And she loved them both, the dead husband and the killer who'd taken him from her. Adanna cried until she had nothing left. Until her eyes were swollen shut and her throat was raw and her chest ached like someone had reached in and torn out her heart with their bare hands. When the tears finally stopped, when her body had given up on producing any more, she sat in the silence of her apartment and pressed both hands against her stomach. A life was growing inside her. A tiny cluster of cells that would become a person. A person who would be half her and half the man who'd destroyed everything. What would she tell this child someday? How would she explain? Your father killed your... No, that's not right. Your father ordered the death of... No, that's worse. There was no good way to frame it. No way to make it okay. But the baby didn't care about any of that. The baby was just growing, cell by cell, becoming real whether Adanna was ready or not. She looked at James's photo again. I don't know what to do, she whispered to it. I'm pregnant with the baby of the man who killed you. And I love him, James. I love him and I hate him and I don't know how to reconcile those things. Tell me what to do. Please. The photo didn't answer. It never did. But as Adanna sat there on her living room floor with the pregnancy test in one hand and the other hand on her stomach, she realized something. She was going to have to choose. Soon. Between the past and the future. Between grief and love. Between safety and the dangerous, complicated man who made her feel alive. And she had absolutely no idea which choice she could survive. Would you forgive? Would you raise that child? Would you love the man who took everything from you? Drop your honest answer in the comments because I need to know. Are you team forgive or team run? Hit that like button if this story grabbed your heart and didn't let go. Subscribe to Korean Stories with Charis and turn on all notifications because part 2 is dropping soon and you do not want to miss what happens next. See you in the next video. Mwah.